Hello, my name is Elizabeth Graham, and I am a transgender woman. My pronouns are her and she. Um, in between the course of August 2018 and October 2017, I have been published on my journey as a transgender woman on the autism spectrum. I was first published in the Huffington Post in October 2017. Later, I was published in Diverse Ability magazine, and again by the West Virginia Autism Training Center at Marshall University, my alma mater. And I'm very grateful of my contacts at the ARC of the United States who have helped me in getting my story out there. I'm also very grateful for the West Virginia Autism Training Center to in publishing my story. I am a proud daughter of Marshall University, class of 2013. So to me, it was a wonderful honor to be featured in a publication from my alma mater. Um, so I wrote a recent updated article. It's my submission for an anthology called Transtistic Anthology. It's going to be compiled by a transgender person who is also on the autism spectrum, but my submission doesn't equally mean publication, so I published this paper on my website on academia.edu. So I'm reading my self-published version of the updated version that I am using moving forward. At the age of 6 months, I was adopted from East Asia by my loving parents. My mom was born and raised in the Midwest and was a musician and sergeant major in the U.S. Army Band. And my dad was born and raised in New England and is the son of immigrants from China and does management consulting. The principal at my Montessori school suggested to my parents I get a psychological evaluation since she detected some learning differences. My mom also took me to a speech therapist for a few evaluation sessions. The evaluations revealed that I had learning needs that would not be best supported in a mainstream education setting. This prompted my parents to enroll me at the Lap School of Washington, a private school in Northwest Washington, D.C. that emphasizes art-based learning for students with moderate learning differences in grades 1 through 12. I was also born with Asperger's syndrome. The official diagnosis did not come until around my sophomore year in high school. Upon learning of my diagnosis, everything made sense, and I felt with this knowledge I could self-monitor and learn more about myself. Throughout my years at Lab School of Washington, as part of my IEP, I received weekly group and individual sessions from the school's in-house occupational therapists and speech-language therapists, and during high school with the clinical psychologists. As I was learning to express myself with others, I also began learning to play music. As a child, I was constantly enriched with the performing arts. From the start, my mom instilled in me a passion for playing music, and we connected through music. I grew up listening to classical music and attending her concerts and her colleagues' concerts. beginning at an early age. At around age of 7 years, I started playing the piano, learning from my mom. Also, I began singing in my church's youth choir. I later switched from the piano over to the accordion in 1999 after seeing my mom's colleague play the accordion, fascinated by the instrument, and I learned from him. Side note, my mom was my music teacher. I had an accordion teacher, and I had various choir teachers and voice teachers at school. But I will always view my mom as my music teacher. Return to the paper. From 2000 to 2004, I competed in accordion competitions across the country and participated in master classes with world famous accordion players. I also took tap dancing classes during elementary school and performed in a couple of theater productions in high school. Even as I was realizing I was different from others socially, I was also beginning to question the male gender I was born into, beginning around 8 years of age. Growing up, I remember having more female friends over for play dates. In my tap dancing classes, I was often the only boy, and that didn't bother me. I went to Disney World in Orlando twice. On these trips, I remember seeing the actors dressed up as various Disney characters. I mostly gravitated towards Cinderella and Princess Jasmine. One Easter, I forget the exact year, but it was between 1997 and 2000. My mom got me a ceramic figure of an Easter bunny. However, I was disappointed that it wasn't a girl Easter bunny, and I wrote a letter to inform the Easter bunny of the mistake. My mom read the letter and reluctantly said, "I'll see if the store still has some." I think she said that to keep me calm, because I don't remember her following up with me on this. I didn't know how my family or friends would react to the fact I was questioning my gender identity, so I kept this a secret for a long time. Whenever I got the chance, whether it be my mom in the basement practicing or teaching music lessons, or both of my parents were out of the house, I would take advantage of every moment I got, and I would wear my mom's clothes and look at the clothing catalog she received in the mail. When I was 11 or 12 years old, my mom caught me with her clothes in my room, lying on the floor, and she got upset. My dad was also upset. I felt too ashamed at the time to tell them the truth, and for quite some time I didn't know any words to describe how I was feeling. In her 50s, my mom died in December 2004 from skin cancer in my freshman year of high school. As is common with teenagers, I didn't spend a great amount of time with my mom, especially in the weeks leading up to her death. I felt sad for not having said I loved her enough or expressed enough how I was thankful for the music lessons and the trips to the accordion competitions, especially after she began hospice care. But that was probably due to my expression challenges with Asperger's prior to diagnosis. I have no siblings, so I felt alone. My dad and I went to a couple of bereavement support groups, and I met other teenagers experiencing similar losses, and this helped me realize that I wasn't the only teenager to experience this kind of loss. In these groups, I never discussed my questioning gender identity because I didn't know how to say it, and I wasn't sure how other members of the group and therapist would respond. My mom and I often bonded together on our annual summer cross-country trips to our family vacation home in the Rocky Mountains, stopping to visit my maternal grandparents on the way. My dad stayed back home and would take a flight out to meet us. We didn't have cable at home, so we watched a lot of movie channels on these trips. We often watched chick flicks movies together, and my mom once commented how most boys my age aren't interested in watching these movies. I did not really react to that comment. Retroactively, I like to view this as our mother-daughter time. In 2007, my dad enrolled me in the Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies College Preparatory Program, a non-credit summer program for high school students. For me, this was an opportunity to immerse myself in a mainstream academic setting, a social dry run, if you will. I don't remember publicly disclosing to anyone my Asperger's diagnosis, but some of the teachers and other students were local, so they knew about the Lab School of Washington. It was from this experience, interacting with mainstream peers, that I realized I could use more preparation to transition into a mainstream school. I felt I could benefit from a full school year at a mainstream school as a stepping stone. After graduating from lab school in 2008, I began my postgraduate year at a mainstream college preparatory boarding school in Pennsylvania, the Perkiomen School. At Perkiomen, I began to involve myself in LGBTQ activities. I was among the founding members of the school's Gay Straight Alliance, GSA, to promote acceptance and understanding on campus. I have learned that today many of the GSAs are now called Gender and Sexuality Alliances to reflect the growing population of people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. A few weeks before graduation at Perkiomen, I confided in a fellow classmate and friend at the time that I was a closeted transgender woman. As is common with people on the autism spectrum, I trusted her completely. I shared with her some photos of myself in women's clothing. Unfortunately, those photos got into the hands of another student who sent the photos to the entire student body. Side comment, I still remember the names of the students involved, but I'm not going to say their names. They know who they are if they and wind up watching this. Return to paper. I found out about this through the dean of students. He called me into his office one night during study hall and told me what happened and what was being done to handle the situation. I told him that I was not out to my dad, and he respected my request for discretion. As I walked the hallways back to my dorm, I could hear laughter from the other students. A couple of days later, the student responsible for the spreading of the photos was identified and expelled. I am thankful to the Dean of Students, faculty, and fellow members of the school's GSA who were kind to me throughout this situation. I've kept in touch with some of my former classmates on Facebook and saw some of them for the first time at my first Perkiomen alumni gathering in Washington, D.C. in October 2016. They all said that I was looking great. As a woman of God, I prayed for the students involved with this unfortunate example of transphobia. I pray the students has or will realize one day the impact of their actions and the impact of transphobia. And once they do, I forgive them. Shortly thereafter, I was accepted to the Marshall University College program for students with autism spectrum disorder for enrollment in fall 2009. I found out about this college program online while at Perkiomen while doing a search for college students with Asperger's and support. I earned my Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and minored in counseling, focusing on bereavement in people on the autism spectrum. I took counseling and sociology classes relating to death and bereavement. I also did a clinical observation at the local hospice as part of my counseling classes with patients, support groups, and a bereavement camp for families. My major project was writing a paper on bereavement in people on the autism spectrum, which I presented at the 2013 Marshall University College of Liberal Arts Conference, as well as in a plenary session at the Tri-State Psychology Conference at the University of Charleston in West Virginia. I went on to present this paper at the Autism Society National Conference in Pittsburgh in July 2013. At Marshall University, I was involved with different student organizations. During my freshman year, I was active in the student LGBT group, helping to educate the campus community on transgender issues and help with safe space training. I would also like to add, not in the paper submission, but I helped facilitate a transgender Q&A panel with a sociology professor who I learned after the submitting this paper that I'm reading to you, he died rather unexpectedly. So a tribute to Oki Napier for bringing awareness in the sociology introduction class in fall of 2009, for bringing awareness and educating the non-transgender population and educating those who may be on various stages in their journey as a transgender or LGBTQ plus person. Return to paper. I performed my accordion in the drag show on campus in spring 2010. Beginning my sophomore year, I became an active volunteer with the campus blood drives. I'm a regular blood donor, influenced by my mom, donating blood in the wake of the Tuesday, September 11, 2001 attacks, and seeing other cancer patients receive blood transfusions. I use this passion of mine to connect with other blood donors and establish the Marshall University American Red Cross Club. I have found socializing and connecting with others is easier when there is an already established mutual interest. However, given my name being in the school newspaper a lot to promote the blood drives and the issues with blood donation with the LGBT community at the time, and that I was not openly transgender, I kept my involvement with campus LGBTQ activities low profile. I was also involved with Marshall's chapter of Students Against Destructive Decisions, or SAD, and served as the secretary in my senior year. Shortly before graduation in May 2013, Dean of Student Affairs Steve Hensley awarded me with the Outstanding Service to Marshall University Award. Upon returning home to Washington, D.C., I wanted to use my personal experience with autism to support people with intellectual or developmental disabilities known as IDD. In October 2013, I began working as a direct support professional that provides community-based residential supports to adults with IDD. I supported adults who live in their own homes as well as those living in staff supported group homes. At this agency, I also help to lead a program that helps young adults with autism and IDD transition from high school to adult life through helping to teach cooking and social skills classes. While I was beginning my professional career, I was also considering my strategy for transitioning. In August 2014, I had moved out of my dad's house and began living with roommates, and this gave me the time and space I needed to evaluate my decision to transition. Also, it gave my dad the space he needed to. In 2015, after seeing a therapist for a while to help me decide if transitioning was the right choice, I decided that a new job would help me get a fresh start, and beginning my transition soon would be best. Remembering my classmates spreading my photos and the reaction from my parents when I was young, I was weary of how people might react. I first came out to friends from church, high school, and college. I decided to come out to my dad on my 26th birthday on August 16th, 2015. All four of my grandparents died in their 80s and 90s by the time I graduated high school, so at least I don't have to worry about, you know, my grandparents and their reaction, but I like to think of it that it would be one of love. My dad, he said he loved me and that he was not too surprised. He told me that he and my mom were having discussions with each other relating to this when I was younger. My dad said seeing Caitlyn Jenner's award speech in July helped him in understanding, so I believe my timing was great. My dad's partner, the woman he is now in a romantic relationship with, said she would continue to love and support me. And we've gone out to get manicures and pedicures. I would like to add, not in the paper. Return to paper. For a brief period, I did part-time driving for Uber and Lyft. One night, I got the courage to drive as my real self. On one ride to the airport, this passenger kept looking at me through the rearview mirror. It wasn't until later I realized I forgot to update my profile photo. I began to realize how open and accepting people are becoming these days of people of different gender identities. Prior to my legal name change, there were plenty of passengers who kindly called me Elizabeth when I asked. Although coming out to strangers is different than to family, this did help me prepare coming out to families and other friends. After the legal aspects of my transition were completed, I was open with sharing my story with passengers who were open, and they often found my journey very interesting to the extent where the ride was too short. Shortly after coming out, I began attending transgender support group therapy sessions and receiving hormone treatment at Whitman Walker Health in Washington, D.C., a clinic well known for supporting the medical and behavioral health needs of the LGBT community. I received and took my first doses of testosterone blockers and estrogen pills on Thursday, November 5th, 2015. Whitman Walker also provides periodic gender and name change clinics and helped me in 2016 with the documents and letters to update my name and gender marker on my social security card, my driver's license, and passport book and passport card. To get a fresh new start, I decided to change my full name. Attending the support group therapy sessions was helpful. It helped me feel less alone in my journey. I also became active again in 2016 in the church I grew up, Westmoreland Congregational United Church of Christ, located in Bethesda, Maryland. On Easter weekend 2016, I received in the mail the court order for my full legal name change. The timing was nice with Easter. My congregation has been supportive of me in my transition. I've spoken at a couple of church events about my transition. This helped with the congregation's decision in adding gender identity to its open and affirming statement. Open and affirming is the United Church of Christ's designation of a congregation being welcoming to members and clergy of different gender identities and sexual orientations. I was also elected to my congregation's Board of Spiritual Formation. I also got involved with the United Church of Christ Potomac Association LGBTQ Network, or Task Force, helping to represent the group at Capitol Pride festivities. I also became connected to local transgender community members and groups. I was offered and accepted the position in November 2015 as a service coordinator for the Maryland waiver for children with autism at the ARC of Prince George's County. Despite interviewing in September 2015 as my former male self, I came out to my boss in an email shortly after accepting the job offer to disclose I was planning to begin my transition. To my relief, my supervisor and her supervisor said that my transition would be a non-issue. My gender transition with my job transition went quite seamlessly. In October 2017, I visited Marshall University and my friends in the college program for students with autism for the family reception and breakfast during homecoming weekend. It was great to see my friends, professors, and mentors from my college days. It was also great to meet some of the current students and their families. Back when I was at Marshall as a student, I would dress up in women's clothes and walk around campus after dark, sometimes with a couple of close friends to whom I confided in. This was not only the first time returning as an alumna, but the first time since beginning my transition. It felt liberating to be back on campus as my true self during daylight. When I reintroduced myself to one of my psychology professors, he said he couldn't recognize me, and I took this as a compliment. I am thankful to my friends from Marshall University for supporting me through my time in the closet and also when I came out. As a transgender woman, I do face challenges. I'm sometimes self-conscious of people noticing that I am transgender and how they would react. I've gotten better with my voice, and I am misgendered less these days over the phone, when my face isn't seen, or at the fast food drive-thru. I also have been working on my alto voice singing, and I have sung once in my church's choir. Dating can be a challenge, especially with men. I don't disclose that I am transgender right away, but I will disclose it prior if we plan on meeting. Right now, I feel security in online dating because of this. I often have asked if my mom was still alive, if she would accept me as her daughter, if she knew she was adopting a late blossoming daughter. The greatest challenge for me so far with my transition has been my mom's absence. While my mom was in hospice, I had a few moments in private with her. I apologized one last time for a few things. However, I didn't tell her that I felt deep down that I was a girl. I felt that this would have been the perfect time to tell her, but at the same time, the timing did not feel right. One night, on the night of May 22nd, 2018, I had dreamt the moment I had longed for. I and my mom, or me and my mom and dad, were at her childhood home. I would like to point out the dream was present day. I had come back in from walking someone out the front door. We were having an emotional discussion about some sort of medical procedure for her. They were talking to me about putting me on a flight back home to Washington, D.C. I remember saying that I wasn't returning home until she was done with the procedure. I gave Mom a hug, and immediately I felt like I was actually hugging her while she was wearing the hospital gown she was wearing when she was in hospice care in 2004. The Thursday or Friday before the Monday my mom died, she said to me, "I love you," as I walked out the door to school, and this was the last day she was awake and talking. These were the last words my mom said to me before she died. And in this dream, when we hugged, she said to me, "I love you, Elizabeth." I began to cry. I then woke up from the dream, shaking and crying. It was about 12:30 in the middle of the night. This was the first dream I had with my mom in it, at least clearly and remembering it, since taking hormones in November 2015. This dream gave me the answers to my questions. As I continued to help people with autism and IDD, and with my involvement with the transgender and LGBTQ communities, I'm constantly reminded of my own experience. I'm reminded that there are individuals with IDD and that are transgender that do not have the same early intervention and loving acceptance I've been blessed with. I'm very thankful to God for a wonderful and supporting family and group of friends